This conference will now be recorded.
Chat, if you can just click in there and just say if you've got any issues with sound your end. But hopefully you can see me. I'm Amy Savage from Morgan McKinley, and you can hopefully see our PowerPoint presentation. So thanks everyone so much for joining us. We work a lot here in Sydney with candidates that are based over in the UK, particularly a lot with Australians that are returning to the market in Sydney. And I speak to a lot over the phone and answer a lot of questions over emails, but we thought it'd be really beneficial for everybody if we all came together as a team and put together some insights for you across the entire market, and in terms of how the process really works from moving back from the UK and over to Australia and what's currently happening in the market. So we've got quite a few topics to cover for you, and I'll just give you a quick introduction to the team as well. Okay, so I'm Amy. I've worked with Morgan McKinley for the last 6 years. I've been in recruitment now for about 15 years, recruiting in the accountancy and finance space for the last 10. So I work here as candidate manager, so that's primarily, I guess, the sort of first point of contact in terms of speaking to candidates when they come and register with the business. We've also got from the team here Josh and Paul, who work on our commerce and industry team. So Josh recruits across contract roles, works a lot with candidates coming back from the UK in terms of when they're looking for something immediate start and into the contract space. Quite often that can be a temp to perm opportunity as well. And then Paul looks after anything in the commerce and industry side and the permanent space. I'm also working here with my colleague Talita, who's on our financial services team. She recruits roles across the FP&A financial analysis space, and then Tamara actually isn't with us today, which is on holiday at the moment, but she looks after financial services, anything that kind of reg reporting and stat, the more sort of financial reporting, financial control side of things. So some of the topics we're going to cover for you today, we're going to go through some market insights, skills in demand, who the clients are that we work with, also just some advice around kind of salaries and what salaries are doing currently in the market, and the best process in terms of engaging with us if you are planning on heading back to Sydney anywhere time in the future. And then obviously an opportunity to ask us any questions. If you do have any questions as we go, feel free to just type them into the box in the right hand corner if everyone can see that, and just log your questions. We can either answer them as we go, or we can take some questions again also at the end. So we'll just get started, and I'll pass you over to my colleague Talita to talk you through some market insights across financial services.
Hello, everybody. So there's a few things happening in the financial services market now, and I'm not sure if you've been up to date with the news, but Royal Commission was a big part of it in the past few months. So on the back of Royal Commission, there has been a hiring freeze with most of the top 4 and major banks in Australia. This happened at around February, and they mostly are coming out of that freeze now, so definitely a good time to get back in the market. The other thing that has been happening a lot is there's regulatory changes happening. So APRA has been asking more detailed reports of what's going on in the business. So everyone's working on an implementation of EFS, which is basically how to provide those detailed reports to APRA. And in terms of accounting standards, IFRS 9, 15 are quite heavy at the moment. IFRS 9 in special because it does impact financial products. So a lot of banks are searching for experienced technical accountants, and that's a role that's in high demand over here. So if you do have this experience there, definitely a good thing to come back here and get a role in this space. Changing transformation, there's a big push across the entire market. Everyone is trying to move into an agile way of business, and they're also looking into automation and streamlining processes as well. So any sort of transformation work that you've done overseas coming into Australia, it's sought after by all of the financial services industry. They want to know that you worked in major projects, that you've done, if not end-to-end, that you played a big part on those projects as well in terms of being a business partner or actually done business plans and so on. Touched on that before, but in terms of automation and business intelligence and data, very big topics with every single company in Australia. So they're looking into streamlining the processes with the ERPs that they have in terms of business intelligence tools. They're using Power BI and Tableau, and using data as well to present and identify key drivers for future revenue for the business and anything. In terms of the wider financial services market, so obviously apart from the top banks, we work with professional services and insurance, and they all hiring quite a lot at the moment. I will touch on that when we go talk about our clients, but it's definitely a space that if you're coming back from the UK, just be open-minded about where you can go within financial services, because there's a lot of good roles out there. Now I'm going to pass that on to my colleague Josh, and he will be able to talk to you about market insights in commerce industry.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening in the UK. Hope you're all doing well. So wanted to run you through some market insights for the commerce industry side. So we're just waiting for the stuff to take over, but I'll get straight into it. So one of the key things that we're seeing is just a continued integration of BI tools. A lot of businesses are now trying to provide more of a visual representation of their business's performance. I think it's something that the UK is very much ahead of the curve with, you know, things like your Tableau, your Power BI, all these tools that will enable a business and enable people across operations, sales and marketing to have a really good snapshot of how their business is performing so they can make more effective decisions. So if you have the opportunity to work with any of these BI tools, whether it's building reports or even just using these reports to explain a message or explain a story to your stakeholders, it's going to be really valuable for yourself. Another thing that we've seen a lot of businesses, I'm not sure if it's been happening in the UK, but it's definitely been happening in Sydney and in Australia, is moving towards a centre of excellence model. And what that effectively means is businesses are trying to centralise a lot of the more sort of month-end and accounting tasks. And what that enables a lot of the more commercial individuals to do is more of the value add, forward looking and looking into the drivers behind the numbers and more of the business partnering. We tend to see a lot of those sort of senior analysts and even sometimes commercial finance manager roles. In the past, they've still had an element of month end. A lot of businesses are trying to move away from that now. So if you have the opportunity to do more of that sort of business partnering, that stakeholder engagement, then it's always a valuable skill to have. Another insight that we've seen is just a growth in the infrastructure space. There's been a huge investment by the government and by a lot of infrastructure companies around sort of building roads, building railways around Australia and around Sydney. We've had the light rail come in. We've had a number of large infrastructure projects, and that's both been an upturn for the infrastructure companies themselves, but also the services companies. You guys may be aware of CPBs and your Ventias, so those types of companies that are providing services to those projects are also seeing a huge growth. The last one, it's more broadly around sort of leasing standards, but that's more, I think, applicable to the local market. But I think overall, if you're being involved in any technical accounting, whether that's sort of revenue recognition projects or if it's to do with new standards that are coming out, sort of IFRS or related to, it's going to be very, very valuable for you coming back to Sydney. So next we're going to talk through some of the skills in demand, and I want to pass over to Amy. Just to let you know as well, we've gained some of the questions coming through, which is great. We'll answer all the questions at the end, so please do keep putting your questions through, and we'll get through all of them at the end. All right, I'll pass you over to Amy now.
Thank you, Josh. So in terms of skills in demand, you'll see obviously on the slide there a few kind of key skill sets that we've picked out that we've really seen some drive for in the last 12 months. I think particularly in financial services, the financial reporting, but mostly that kind of reg and technical accounting world. We've seen consistently over the last 12 months, the likes of Macquarie, Westpac and CBA all continuously recruiting across the reg space at manager, senior manager and associate director level. Because as Talita mentioned, those kind of EFS projects, there's been a real drive and a real focus in the reg space. So there's been not only the more reg projects types of roles coming through, but also just your kind of BAU positions as well. Decision support, FP&A, we've had a lot happening in that space. And I'm not sure as generally, but I do, when I work with a lot of Australians coming back from the market in the UK, a lot of them tend to come back with that more kind of commercial financial analysis skill set than in that kind of reg and stat world. So if there is anyone in that reg world watching, feel free to give me a shout, because we've always got loads happening. But it's definitely, I think I see a lot of people, I guess, moving over to the UK and then definitely moving more into that kind of FP&A financial analysis world. But there's always roles across that space. We've seen the likes as well of our sort of major property clients like Lendlease, and then other majors like Woolworths going through revenue recognition projects as well. So all of that kind of analysis and reporting piece across both financial services and commerce and industry, there's been a real drive for, I guess, between that kind of, particularly in the sort of 120k to 150k kind of salary level. Obviously, when you're kind of bouncing above that, there's obviously fewer roles at that more senior level. But in that reg and stat space, as I mentioned, there has been a lot happening over the last 12 months. Something else that's also really important, I think, and just really good to bear in mind when you're in the UK is, I guess, the opportunity that you have in the UK versus the opportunity that you have in Australia. A lot of clients here want everyone to tick, I guess, not all of the boxes, but say 90% of the boxes in terms of the job description. Whereas in the UK, I do see a lot of people having that much more opportunity. So you can go to the UK having gone through Big Four audit, working in commerce audit, and then you can go and work in product control and investment bank. It seems like the market there is so much more open and more flexible to accepting different backgrounds. So my advice really in terms of looking at what the types of roles you want to do when you come back to Sydney is really kind of mapping out your career when you're in the UK. So think about what you want your move to be in Sydney, and is that a move that you can make in the UK that will be easier to make there and gain more experience in before coming back to Sydney, just because the market is a bit more open to it. So let's say, for example, if you're working in cost analysis and you have always been in cost, you know, if you want to move into revenue, and it's not to say it wouldn't happen in Sydney, because it can and absolutely does happen, but try and gain that revenue experience in the UK. I think one area that we see Australians, particularly if they go over on a 2-year work visa and then come back, an area where they can sometimes fall shorter in terms of experiences, they've sort of bumped up the salary chain a little bit, but then they haven't had the opportunity to gain any managerial experience, which I get could be quite difficult when you're working in contract roles in the market over there. So if there is ever any opportunity or any team leadership, coaching, get that kind of managerial experience from your CV, that can also be real benefit. So yeah, if anyone does have any more questions on that, then please feel free just to drop some notes at the side. But I'll just pass you back over to Talita, and she'll have a chat through some of our financial service clients.
Hi again. So we try to put a big spread of all of our clients that we work with in Australia. So you have, you know, Macquarie Global Investment Bank, quite big here, and big employer, as well as CBA and Westpac, and you have the insurance companies such as QBE that is doing quite well and is moving through into that transformation sort of piece, and really putting together all of the finance business partners to work as in an alliance really with the strategy team. So quite an exciting change that they are doing internally. With Macquarie, they are and I think that's something that's probably has been done in the UK, but like making sure that FP&A teams are working with the business and partnering with the business. And I think that's a model that everyone is moving towards in a market, is making sure that you have all the tools to be able to be a true partner for the business that you service, and give good commentary and insights that will help with decision making. In terms of reg and technical accounting, I think all of them would be hiring loads. So, you know, Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, Citi, AMP, UBS, they all look for this type of professionals here. And in terms of finance business partners, they will be across the market as well. And it's finding that person that have a good foundation in terms of technical skills, but can come with that commercial approach to the role and really make the best outcome out of the insights and the internal and external drivers in a business. We also do a lot with fintechs. So if you come back home and you're really looking into a role that is a bit more broad, that's one good route to go to. So you have like an end-to-end finance role, and it's really good to kind of know how a whole business work and take shape. So if it's something that you're excited about being part of, we would be happy to put in contact with the fintechs that we work with. And yeah, insurance businesses are really hiring loads. So if you're open-minded about where you're going to go, that's definitely a good way to start a new role in Australia. Now, I'll pass you over to Poe. He will talk to you about the clients in commerce and industry and give you a little bit of a background there as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Alicia. Good morning from Sydney, guys. So I just want to run you through briefly some of our major commerce and industry clients that we deal with here. So we've quite a broad range from your FMCG retail to your heavier services industries to airlines and all the rest. So recently we've probably done a lot of work with the likes of Valinta Energy. They're quite aggressively attacking the retail energy space, along with AGL. Major transformations going on in both of those businesses, lots of opportunity there. Qantas there, for example, they're another business. They have went through a finance transformation. They've moved to that Centre of Finance Excellence format that Josh spoke about earlier. Enables them also then to do a lot more kind of core finance business partnering as well, which is really, really good. Lots of activity between different businesses also. So when you look at the likes of Lion and Campbell Arnott's, they've been doing their own different pieces of M&A work and doing their own divestments and all the rest as well. Then in the media space, there's been a lot going on too. I'm not sure if you would have heard, so the likes of Fairfax and Media and Nine Entertainment, they merged. JC and Adshell, they had another project coming together as well. So there's lots of movements in that space, which inevitably does create a lot of opportunity. And any guys with that kind of M&A experience is quite relevant here as well. Other businesses worth mentioning that we're dealing with quite heavily at the moment is one is Lendlease. They're going through a sale of one of their major business units as well at the moment, and Vodafone, there's a lot of change in there. TPG merger didn't get signed off as of yet, but that's something that they're hoping to have go through in the next 12 months or so. So lots of opportunity across those clients. You can see some others there also. Next on, then we're going to just have a chat to you about some current opportunities that we're working at the moment and where they would fit kind of skill set wise. Yep, so just I suppose I'll just give you a brief rundown of those. So the top role you have there is with a subsidiary of a major healthcare business that we're dealing with. So they're looking for a finance manager, ideally someone who's ex kind of advisory or ex Big Four background, and with some more recent experience in financial management, so the likes of your month-end reporting and management reporting. They're looking for someone with ideally about 5-6 years PQE. So, and that's paying around 150k plus mark. Then the next role that we have is finance business partner with major airlines business. That's partnering with their corporate IT function. So really acting as that business partner, giving those insights. They're looking for someone anywhere between that 3 to 5 years PQE experience wise, and they'll pay anything from that 135k to 150k plus super mark. Some of the other more recent roles then that we've had is, for example, a senior accountant position. We're paying around 115k plus. The type of profile we're looking for there is someone who is ideally strong technical accountant coming from your Big Four, your mid-tier, then with some industry experience for probably about 2 years. That's paying in around that 115k plus supermark. And then a senior business analyst role, very similar style of profile, ideally an advisory or Big Four background previously. And then since that moved into a more analytical role. Just also to follow on, I want to give you a quick snapshot of a couple of success stories we've had for returners coming back. So just recently we've recruited for a senior finance analyst role, and that was a UK returner. a guy who had been in advisory previously. Then since that, has done about 3 to 4 years in a engineering services business in the UK. Since coming back here, then we've placed him at a salary of 125k plus super plus bonus, with a large, quite a large infrastructure business here. One second one then that we have is someone who's all actually kind of commerce and industry background, CA qualified, got about 7-8 years post-qualified experience. They've gone as a senior finance BA into a multinational FMCG business. So yeah, just to give you a snapshot of where things are at. That's paying in around that 140k plus super mark plus bonus. So that'll give you an idea of the salaries in those roles as well. Next up then, we're going to pass you back to the financial services guys, just to follow through on their salary guides and their type of roles.
So in terms of financial services, you'll see a kind of snapshot there of some of the roles we're currently working on. But there's, I mean, obviously, as I've mentioned previously, the reg reporting space, and that's just, I guess, one snapshot of a particular role. We have multiple roles across that space currently, it really kind of starting from that finance manager level and up, which kicks off around about the sort of 130k. We've been doing a lot of work, I think, across the banks. Macquarie has probably been the one that has been consistent recruiting across the last 12 months. There's been a lot happening within their financial control space, and also in that more specific reg reporting space. FP&A has been a huge area, particularly in the insurance sector in the last year, or last sort of 6 months or so. There's been a lot happening in insurance around that more financial analysis piece. Salaries in the range of kind of 130 to up to probably about 160, because roles sort of more differing in level. Not always obviously necessary to have people management experience. A lot more of those roles can be a bit more standalone. So great opportunities for people coming back from the UK to kind of look into applying for. And I guess in terms of industries across financial services, a lot of those will be very specific in terms of they'll want someone who's actually had some insurance experience in the past, or they'll want someone who's had that exposure to the sort of technical financial reg reporting space. There's also been quite a bit happening across costs. So for example, we have a role with one of the banks at the moment, which is a bit more cost focused around that kind of IT and tech space, as well as bits and pieces that come up within fintechs, which can be really good opportunities. I do think it's just worth obviously mentioning, obviously you're probably really aware that the market in London is really lucrative in terms of contracting. Unfortunately, salaries don't transfer quite so well into Sydney. So I always say to people, make as much money as you can whilst you're in the UK, because here, obviously, salaries haven't really taken any big leaps in the last few years. They've really stayed sort of just progressively sort of slowly increasing. There's not been any kind of dramatic increases, whether you're sort of contracting or in a permanent position. We do have a more comprehensive salary guide on our website, which I can email obviously to everybody who's with us today. I can email out some links to that afterwards. And I did see actually someone had put a question there at the side about the PowerPoint slides, so we can also just send those out as well in the same email. I'm going to just give you guys as well a bit of an overview in terms of the process and what's the best way to engage with us if you are moving back or have any further questions about the market. So there's a few key points. I'm always happy to answer people's questions, whether you're returning next week or whether you're returning in 2 years' time. I'm always available on email. I'm happy to arrange calls and Skypes with people. But I guess one of the most important things for me to kind of help give you more specific advice and be very specific to you is by sending me an up-to-date CV, because I guess I just sort of mentioned salaries there, but that was a sort of very broad view in terms of that's what roles are paying. But in order to say to you, okay, this is what I think your worth is kind of in the Sydney market and the types of salary ranges that you can look at, an up-to-date CV is really useful. So first things first, you can reach out to me via email and send through a CV. And then it's obviously having a think about when you're planning on coming back to Sydney. Do you have an actual set move date versus are you thinking about heading back later this year? My best advice in terms of kickstarting an actual job search process is to really think about 3 months before you're heading back is a really good time to sort of re-engage with us. That's a good time for us to say, okay, here's the live roles in the market currently. Do you have a set date to move? I think employers here are very open to talking to candidates that are overseas, but they're so much more open to it if there's a set move date. If you are saying you might move back in a couple of months' time, they are, I guess, less committed because there's that less commitment from your side as well. It's very sort of 50-50 maybe. But if you're saying to us, right, we're moving back on the 1st of September, we can say to clients, okay, we've got this candidate, they're moving back on the 1st of September, they're available for interviews over Skype. And we have clients, like for example, Macquarie Bank, they've got a big office in London. So if people interview with them, they can go down to their offices, it can be arranged over video conference call, they can sit psychometric assessments. So it's really quite straightforward nowadays to try and arrange and kickstart that interview process whilst people are still offshore. And alternatively, if that's not the route you want to go down, if you're going to go travelling for a bit before you head back, you can always just, you know, I guess if we know you're heading back, we can start providing you with job specs and share them with you, and then we can start arranging interviews when you're back. I'm always happy to engage with people and answer any questions in terms of market updates. And what I do, I guess, in terms of my role from the candidate manager side is help update you and provide that information. And then I'll always pass and share your details with the most relevant consultants on the team. So let's say Josh or Paul, for example, if you're looking for a role in the commercial sector, I'll update them, let them know you're coming back, and then they can share with you any job specs and roles that they think might be of interest. So really, I guess in terms of a sort of snapshot of that, the best thing to do is, if you want to kickstart the process, is send me your CV, let me know maybe rough dates in terms of when you're heading back, but I'm always happy to answer questions whether you're unsure if it's now or in a year's time or whatever, and then I can put you in touch with the relevant consultants and really kind of start that process maybe 3 months beforehand, because it just gives you an idea of what's happening in the market currently. And obviously permanent recruitment processes can take, you know, up to a sort of month or so, and people would expect you to maybe have a 4-week notice period to work out anyway. So that kind of covers everything. Obviously, if anyone does have any questions, I'm available if anyone wants to reach out to me directly with any more specific questions, and obviously everybody on the team is also available as well. My contact details are just noted there, and I will send everybody out an email today just with a copy of that salary guide that I mentioned and a copy of the slides, which I'm sure we can get. But obviously it's great opportunities. If anybody has any questions on anything across financial services or commerce and industry or recruitment process, feel free to just drop a note at the side now, and we'll just try and have a work through some of the questions. I did see one pop up there about roles in Brisbane and Melbourne. So we don't, unfortunately, we only have an office based in Sydney, and I don't know any recruiters in the Brisbane market, but I do have one I always refer candidates to in Melbourne, who actually used to work for one of our Morgan McKinley offices. I think she was in our Irish office. So if anyone wants to reach out for me for those details, I can obviously share them with you. I'm not sure what other questions are coming up. Is anything else coming through?
We're just going to the
Sorry, we're just going to have a quick look through the questions and then give you through some answers. So yes, so Peter, there will be a copy of the presentation distributed, so I can send that out to everyone today.
Yeah, cool.
I've just answered that one about Brisbane and Melbourne.
So Josh,
Okay, I'll pass you over to Josh on that question about shedding some light on the contract market across commerce and industry.
Hi everyone. So yeah, I've got a question here, which is from Jay. So thanks for your question, Jay. Are you able to shed some light on the contract market as well as for commerce and industry to understand types of roles, hourly rate, etc.? So obviously depending on level and sort of seniority and what type of role. I'll give you some sort of examples from my side. So a lady who had spent around 5 years in a graduate program in Sydney, moved to Australia for 2 years, so sort of circa 6 to 7 years experience in total in a more commercial analysis type role. Came back, was sort of in and around that sort of circa 115 to 120k base plus super. Now, in terms of how that translates to a hourly rate, it's not an exact science, but we would typically half the first three numbers. So if you're 120k plus super, for example, you would half the 120, and $60 would be your hourly rate. So roughly, if you're looking at, again, these are examples, 140k plus super, roughly $70 an hour plus super would be your hourly rate. And then we just multiply that by 8 hours in a day if we want to get to a day rate. I did used to recruit in London, and I know that the contracting market is very lucrative, and things like setting up your own limited company and other things can provide some lucrative earning opportunities. There's not the same sort of perks and benefits from contracting in Sydney. Many people do go as a PAYG employee rather than through their own limited company versus London as well. So that's a little bit about sort of the commerce and industry side. So yeah, be keen to see if there's any other. I think as well as another thing to note is if you're doing contract roles or you're part of project roles in the UK, when you're updating your resume, really have a think about what achievements that you've had, and if there's anything there, you may already be doing this, but if there are any significant achievements that have a tangible number, say for example, if you're in a commercial role and you're looking at cost saving initiatives, if you're able to put a tangible number on that, like an amount from a sterling or dollars perspective, it'll add a lot of weight to your CV and it will have a big impact. Again, it could be something more around like process improvements or improving things around month end. But if it's something that's got a percentage or a dollar or a sterling amount attached to it, it will really help. Trying to look through if there's any other questions. So I'm going to pass you through to Paul as well, just to answer the next one.
Yeah, so we just had a message in there from Craig. Sorry, I'm just reading it quickly here now in regards to the not-for-profit sector. So there wouldn't be just a huge market for that right here in Sydney. However, the follow-on part of your question is quite relevant in terms of what we do get asked from candidates returning. So in terms of being able to move from one area that you are working in and move into a different area. So let's say if you're working in financial services and moving across the commerce and industry, if you're working in not-for-profit and across the commerce industry, that is something that we do see happen, and that can be done. Now, it is very much dependent on probably what your role is if you're in financial services, if you're working in a business partnering role, let's say working with corporate or working with an operational or a capital expenditure budget, that's something that we can see transition across quite easily. If you're in a very niche area of financial services, then it is a little bit more difficult. It is also generally, people are a little bit open-minded if they have moved before previously and if they have that kind of diverse skill set as well. Then just in terms of the next question, I'm going to pass you across to Lisa. She's going to answer that one.
Hi guys, so we've got a question about if you place people in IT with IT risk background. The answer is yes, we do. We have a risk team that's not here today to present, but they do work across all risk roles, including IT risk. I can ask Amy to put in contact with the right consultant that would be looking after their particular background in Australia, and you can take it from there. There's also a few questions that were sent by candidates that couldn't actually attend to the webinar. Other things came up apparently. The one thing that they asked is when, very legitimate question about when the FS market's going to be picking up. The answer is it is picking up already. So a lot of companies are getting out of the hiring freezes and actually looking into hiring a lot more aggressively. The answer is with a few companies that have their year end in September, there's probably going to wait around a little bit to get to that stage, but they are still going out to market with roles, which is quite good for us and for anyone coming from overseas. The other question that I got is someone from banking background moving into an insurance company and vice versa. The transition is very easy, really, and it's just a matter of like being in a role that, as Paul said, is not too specific and having that ability to learn and grasp concepts quickly. So in most times, insurance companies or banking would take on the opportunity and take you in under their wing and give you time to really grasp those concepts in the way that you need. Now, I'm going to pass you on to Josh. I think he's going to answer a few other questions that may have come up, and I'll go from there. Thank you. Bye.
Hi everyone. I've just got a question here. I thought it'd be good for us to answer on the commerce side. So thank you for this great question. Do you find a lot of commerce and industry finance roles tend to be outside of the CBD in the bigger organizations? So it's a really good question. It's something that obviously if you're making that move back as well, whether you're going to be sort of again living with the folks or you're going to be looking to settle down back into Sydney, probably thinking about which area you're going to live in. The CBD is for most people an ideal location. There are actually a lot of commerce clients based in the CBD. You've got most of your major telco and your major like IT and tech businesses. We've got some of our sort of startup tech businesses based in the Rocks and based sort of near Circular Quay. There are a few of your larger corporates in the healthcare space as well. So one of our clients, Sonic Healthcare, they had most of their corporate head office based in Macquarie Park, and they've actually just made the move to Circular Quay. You will find that a lot of the FMCG or the large corporate medical devices and pharmaceutical businesses are based in Macquarie Park. So if you are going to be living in that sort of area or in northwest Sydney, then you're going to have a lot of opportunities to work for businesses out that way. Another major client of ours is Woolworths, and they have their corporate head office in Bella Vista. So again, these tend to be businesses where, because of their locations as well, if you're an individual that can work in that location, we definitely want to know about it, because some of these companies do struggle sometimes to find high caliber people who can obviously do those locations. So if you live near sort of Bella Vista or some of those more tricky locations, please do let us know. It's always good to know these things. Just trying to think if there's any other businesses as well. I don't know if there's any other questions around that. Is there a trend of employers offering more fixed term contracts than permanent roles? Yes, no. I think the sort of try before you buy method with a fixed term contract is good. I think a lot of our clients we're still seeing growth in the permanent side. I'm probably seeing a few more clients moving towards fixed term contract rather than hourly or day rate at the moment. So we are seeing a bit of an upturn in fixed term contract versus hourly rate. We tend to see across like your retailers and your FMCG clients and media clients that there's more of an appetite for those fixed term contracts. I think more of your financial services, property and infrastructure businesses are happy to do hourly rates still. I'm just going to have a look at another. Hope that answers your question, everyone. Am I passing over to you? Yeah, I'm going to pass you through to Amy, and she's going to answer the next question.
Okay, hi. So we just had a question there come through from Vlad asking, with Brexit unresolved and dragging on, with slowdown of job movements in the UK, how much change are you seeing with candidates moving back to Oz, and has there been marketable change now from previous years? And actually, no, not any difference at all, to be honest. We tend to see people either coming back after their 2-year work visa, or if they're fortunate enough to get sponsored and stay on. I think people so far from what I've seen over the last year are just coming back when they're ready to come back, and it's not been driven at all by the market in the UK. We've just had another question come through there. Sorry, just having a quick read. I might just pass you back to hold on. Yeah. And there's just another question here from Cameron. How long can one expect to secure a role on return to Sydney as an expat when you've been in London for a number of years, i.e. 10 to 14 years? There's a few dependables in terms of answering that question. It depends on your experience, it depends on your level. Obviously, I think the more UK experience is looked upon here, it's really highly regarded. So I think most employers here see UK experience and they, it's as comparable, let's say, to, some Sydney experience, depending obviously on the nature and types of role. I think particularly if it's in banking and investment banking and stuff like that, UK experience is always looked upon really well. And again, if you've 10 to 14 years in the UK, it kind of depends what salary level you're at, because the higher up the chain you are, the fewer roles there are at that level. So it can just be a bit more competitive in terms of against local candidates. So I know it's a bit of a vague answer, but without knowing, I guess, a bit more in terms of your background, but I'm happy if you want to shoot me an email through with a few more specifics in terms of your background, and I can give you a bit of a better and more direct kind of answer in terms of how easy and likely that is in terms of your salary expectations and stuff. I'm just going to pass you, actually, we've had a question come through from Jay about relationships with big retailers, so I'm just going to pass you back to Josh or Paul to have a quick answer of that question.
Yep. So just in relationship, one person has asked us in terms of introducing candidates to businesses a little bit more proactively. We'd actually like to say Morgan McKinley prides ourselves on trying to create opportunity for a lot of candidates wherever we can. So if there is businesses that we are working with that we feel that we would have a really strong relationship, we would ideally look to do one of two things, to introduce you to a business which remit for them creating an opportunity if you were a skill that they had in demand, or secondly, we would potentially put you in front of another business that they may be interested in having a chat with you from a networking perspective. They might be able to then shed some light about how you could get into that industry, and then it may be a thing that in 3 to 6 months time an opportunity comes up that they actually would actually come back to us and say, look, we met Paul a few months ago, we really liked him, and we really want to look at his skill set again. So that's definitely something that we can help you on, if there is a strong relationship with the business in question. And on from that, we wouldn't look to tell you we do have a relationship with a business. We don't. If we thought you would be better off using your own means to contact the business, we would do so also. I'm just going to check, see if there's anything else that's come up last few minutes.
Salary.
Yeah. Sorry. No worries. How much? So just another question there in terms of how much value do you get in the package versus base salary? So how much is the average salary package worth? Yes, sorry. Okay. So look, generally what we would speak about here in the market when we speak about salaries is we would go off a very definite number of your base plus your superannuation. So we have seen with some of our larger clients, they leverage off their brand. They try and speak a little bit more about the perks of the organization and the perks of the bonus and the large bonus. However, generally what we will be briefing you on is your base salary plus super. Ultimately, bonus is down to every company's performance. That's not something that we want to overpromise to you on, and then for you to be disappointed as someone who's taking up a role. So everything you will be quoted from our side of things would have a base salary, and then bonus would be something on top of that. I'm just going to pass you then back across to the guys in terms of answering the next question. And yep, back over to Amy. Thank you.
A question there from Suzanne, just in terms of how understanding employers are if you've taken career breaks, either I guess as maybe working mum or for other family commitments. Again, without being too vague, it's very dependent on how long you've been out the market, depends on your background before that. Quite often when people have been out of the market for a while, one, it's obviously just really important, I think, to brush up on interview skills. And whenever we have candidates interview, we always help people with interview preps. And obviously just really sort of taking yourself back to that time when you were in that role and refreshing and making it as sort of current as possible and staying up to date in terms of current legislations and any kind of regulatory changes. But quite often, if you've been out of the market for a while, a really good way back in is through contracting, because I guess if you're looking at perm roles, employers will obviously review all CVs, but if I guess there's been somebody in a role more recently, then sometimes they can obviously have more success through the interview process. But contracting is a great way in because it means you're available immediately. You know, clients want to move that bit quicker, and they're quite often open to giving people that opportunity. I actually had a candidate recently who had been in accounting, was actually over in the UK, moved into trading, so completely away from that kind of financial reporting side of things. He was out for 5 years, and we've just placed him actually into a contract role. So there's definitely ways back in, and it's really just about how you sort of go about working through your CV and sort of trying to keep your experience as current and relevant as possible. So I'm just going to have a quick look and see if there's any further questions.
One about flexibility.
There's one here around bonus. Again, it can depend a little bit on employers, but I think typically it would be in the region of like 15 to 20%, and that's usually broken down in terms of, it can be overall company performance, it can be overall team performance, and then it can be your own sort of individual own performance KPIs. Okay, so there's a question also about flexible working. I think actually that the market has changed a lot in the last couple of years. There's a real drive now from most employers to offer, you know, flexible working, and there's people that work days from home, there's people that work flexi hours, and it's not possible sort of necessarily across the board. And they're obviously, particularly within the finance space, there are those times with month end and stuff where people obviously were still required to kind of put in those hours, but quite often the employers are much more flexible in terms of those hours being done from home if needs be. People go home, log on, people work 3-day weeks. We have, I've spoken a bit about the reg reporting space, but like the reg team that we work with in Macquarie, for example, there's lots of sort of job shares there, there's part-time mums, and, you know, I think that perception can be sometimes, particularly with investment banking, that it's, you know, really full on kind of hours, but actually it's really dependent on teams and different companies. So yeah, absolutely, that's something that we can work with. You know, we represent people now that are only wanting a 4-day week or 3-day week. I think 4-day weeks are probably easier to secure something than 3 days. That's definitely, you know, if a role is full-time, we can always say to a client, look, this person only wants a 4-day week. And sometimes, depending on, I guess, the relevance of their experience for that role and background, that's definitely looked at and can go through interview processes and can make it happen. I think when you're jumping down to a 3-day week, that's definitely a bit trickier. So hopefully that answers your question. I'll just see if there's anything else that's popped up. I think that's everything. If anyone has any more questions, to quickly get them on now. Oh, okay, we've just got one here. Is there a trend to condensed hours, 5-day week in 4 days? Is there? Do you want to answer that? No, not so much. No, there's obviously more flexibility in terms of flexi hours. There's days from home, but we're not seeing that sort of 3-day weekend kind of thing kicking in, or extra days from home. Is there anything? I'm just going to have a quick look in case there's anything else. Yes, thank you, Suzanne. It was a very early start. We were up at 3:30 a.m. So look, I hope everyone's found this really beneficial. You know, we work a lot with candidates returning, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. I will drop everyone an email and I'll share everybody's contact details this morning. And if you have any, as I mentioned, questions anytime, just feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll connect with you all on LinkedIn and stuff. I'm not sure if anyone else has, if there's anything else anyone else wants to add. But otherwise, yeah, I think that's kind of covered everything. So thank you so much for joining us. This is something that we'll hopefully, you know, plan to do a bit more of, so we can engage with everybody and just provide more sort of, I guess, blanket market updates across both financial services and the commerce industries, because as we've sort of mentioned, you can transfer from one sector to the other, and it's quite interesting to see what's happening in terms of the market trends and stuff. So thank you, everybody, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. See ya.
Yeah. So that's a wrap.
Wow.